in the past, body count used to refer to deceased soldiers in wars. But nowadays it refers to the number of people that somebody would have actually slept with. If you follow me, yeah, but Bagiti Salbonani, welcome to the Sunny Jermaine Show, the SJ Show, Reflections with SJ, Kamau Sani, if you do not know already. Don't know what Bagiti, 32 years, Blawayo, and 7 years, Netherlands. That's how I like to introduce myself, is because don't you just hate when you come across a black person somewhere and you have to struggle to figure out where are you from? I do not know why people struggle with that question. As somebody who is proudly a Bulawayo, and someone like, oh my gosh, you are so Bulawayo, and I'm like, yes I am, this is my city of Bulawayo. I lived there literally for 32 years of my life. So reflections. Bulawayo, by the way, is in the southwestern part of Zimbabwe, and we call ourselves Umtwagazi. I think I've made many TikToks about that. Should we do that here? You guys are gonna have to let me know. Anywho, reflections. What is going on these days? So I've been back on Facebook or at least actively back, because literally for the past 15 years, since 2010, I had a poor relationship with Facebook. I would just throw something and just leave it there. So I have two Facebook pages, by the way. I have a page and naturally a profile for myself, and then a public page. So sometimes some people, I have them on my profile, and then some people, I have them on my page, and then some people on my page who should be on my profile, I can't see them, and then it's like, angas, namangas. So internet things. So if you are on my page and should be on my profile, we need to fix that. But I don't know where to begin, because I've got quite a lot of people on my thing. But anywho, good to be with you. And Bob Marley, don't worry about a thing. Ajax is the football team in Amsterdam. It's the equivalent of Highlanders in the Netherlands. Ajax, it has 126 years, yes, since 1900, and Highlanders, of course. I get. Highlanders is turning 100 years in 2026. What a spectacular way to turn 100 years in it. I think we spoke about it the last time that it was started by Abazugulu. Right? I think we all know that story. And you can always go back to my previous reflections video on YouTube. We spoke about that the other time. So Facebook has been it's been rocking and kicking it. So 2025, I left Twitter finally, as many people did in 2024 going into 2025, because it became a cesspool of a space. In fact, I am judging you if you are still on Twitter at this stage, because of all the nonsense that is being allowed over there, right? And and everything that's really bad that's going on over that platform, right? So unfortunately, Ujakwa things like Twitter as a seller platform. Twitter was a really engaging space. It needed you to compress your thoughts into 250 words or less or something like that, and then things went awry. And it hasn't been the same in fact, actually, you know what? Twitter started being bad in 2015. Most people didn't realize it. Twitter has been bad for an entire 10 years, right? So, it just sort of went downhill after 2015 and there. What's going on in the world? The Epstein files, seen them? Guess who's not on the Epstein files? Drag queens, trans people, black journalists. None of the people that for the past 6, 7 to 10 years were being accused of trying to be woke, whatever that was. And not whatever that was. We all knew woke means be aware of the world you live in. And then other people took woke to mean something that it did not mean, right? And it was being racist for any avoidance of doubt, right? And it is. Epstein files. We haven't heard any apology to the LGBT community, by the way, for what people were saying these entire past years, right? All right, let me grab my little notes. Of course, the book, Tolelega Mtwakazi. Yeah, it's coming soon to South Africa. Yes, definitely it's coming soon to South Africa. Look out for it in March 2025. Finally, I think I can now make promises. That's a kaya. Yeah, so Tolelega Mtwakazi, that's my new book from 2025. And yeah, it's coming at a time... all right, so I'm recording this on February 14. Vale, how's your Valentine? I think I mentioned I need to burp. Abadala bafika when I'm recording. And I gotta burp. If you know what that means. No, I'm just kidding. All right, it's just a burp. I had a glass of milk some minutes ago. Vale, how was Valentine? Kunjani, tell me in the comment section. Khamanjani, me, I'm single. I was in a long distance relationship for about 4 years now, since 2022, literally. But yeah, it didn't turn out so well. Yeah, I guess the distance, really, the distance. Yeah, don't have much to say. I mean, you can go on my Facebook and you can read it. I mean, I wrote about it. In other romance news, actually, a Dutch newspaper today on 14 February mentioned a headline along the lines of, in the past, body count used to refer to deceased soldiers in wars, but nowadays it refers to the number of people that somebody would have actually slept with. If you follow me on Dr. Love with the Malumu Ezra Chisa and the panel of ladies, I've said this last year, 2025, right? Ukuthi i-body count bokele umjide ngokuthi i-body count imi njani uyathi 1.5. Says 1.5. Anything more than that, you are driving him crazy. That's just the psychology of men and obabanja. Why would you have one body count? Who needs that type of nonsense in their life? I always wonder, Obaba, when they say they want virgins, I'm like, who needs that type of nonsense? You know, the funny thing, Abantu, they believe the most absurd things about sex. You know, it's really absurd. By the way, I have a certificate from the United Nations Interagency Standing Committee on the Minimal Initial Services Package for humanitarian aid in emergencies. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but that's what UN language does, right? So I am well trained on the spectrum of sex and sexuality and sexual reproductive health, right? So seriously, they're gonna go internet fighting all over things that you don't know about. But then what can we do? You know, there's a danger that's going on in the real world these days where people want to make up their own information in life. Life doesn't work like that. You can't make your own things up. So unfortunately, Inengi Labantu is choosing to make their own things up. And it ended worse. Biblical data. I'm calling it biblical data because I'm trying to be polite. Biblical and data in the same sentence. You know, some of the things that people make me hear. Okay, my mic usually has a thing on it. My locks and the mic. Okay, let me fix that. Gosh, after this whole entire time. Yeah. I have a heavy breathing. I think I mentioned that when I moved to the Netherlands, not even when I moved, I think 2 or 3 years back, I discovered I have a herniated diaphragm. So my breath just goes away. Can you imagine? I never knew this. Everybody was used to wonder, but anyhow. Right, so body count. What's your body count? 1. Ladies, body count 1.5. We don't say more than that. All right. Sad news in the radio industry. As you know, I'm a broadcaster. Started in community radio. By the way, in 2006 to 2007, 6 of us or 7, I think 6 or 7 of us, we did research into broadcasting in Bulawayo, right? We were physically walking in the streets, going suburb by suburb, Njube, Ndumba, Mpophoma, Nkulumane, Country Park, everywhere. We were literally everywhere talking to people. So when I see, now I'm going off script, that's why I don't like writing things down. When I see Sokulama community radio stations these days, or Radio Bukalanga, or Depe, Manama, Oleja, is it Leja, Oleja? I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ewange. What's the other one? Kazambezi, I think, which broadcasts to the Donga areas. Kazambezi, right? I hope I'm getting it right. And all the other, predominantly in Matabeleland, all the community radio stations that are predominantly in Matabeleland. I'm like, I'm so happy it took them 20 years to figure it out. Yay! We had the research at the University of Science and Technology in Bulawayo, National University of Science and Technology in Bulawayo. Somebody took a decade plus to read, and here we are. But anywho, siyabongela bakithi ukuthi i-radio industry has picked up in Matabeleland, and I'm really happy, because when you now see ukuthi people have options. For example, when you see ukuthi DKP and Manesi left Skies Metro FM, they're now Kulumani, or Last Door left Breeze FM in Victoria Falls, and they're now at Kulumani. Yeah, those are the type of things we wanted when we were younger, right? By the way, I need to return to radio. We're going to do that sometime, okay? Life expectancy rate has gone up. So here's the thing. In Western countries, right, they are planning to increase the retirement age slowly to 70, right? And yet life expectancy has gone up. The quality of life has gone up. Are people aware of what the quality of life has gone up? Somebody once sent me a message saying, oh my God, the state of the world, when Trump was voted into power like some years back. I'm like, do you know that I'm a human beings? We are doing so much better in the past 100 years than the entire 100,000. We are doing so much better in the past 100 years than we have been doing in the past 100,000 years. Doing so much better now. The ability to have lights and showers. Do you know that 50 years ago there were no hot showers? The hot shower is a new thing. So we have an epidemic in human society. We are unaware of how much of a privileged life we're living now compared to back then. Of course, how do I describe it? There are journeys to it, depending on when your family left a village and moved to a city. It doesn't matter whether you're in Europe or you're in Africa, Slobo. A village is a village. A village in Europe is a village in Europe. A village in Africa is a village in Africa. A village in America is a village in America. Do you know that there are people in the United States who don't have passports, who've never traveled by aeroplane? People who don't have electricity in the United States. And somebody in that line of that family has to move to a city for that family's life to change. So it's everywhere, really. In African countries, we have a narrow view of what Western countries are, right? We really do. Either we have an inflated idea or we have a deflated idea. It goes both ways. I'm an extreme angwathandi, so still I feel ungazijoyina ama extremes. Too happy, too sad, deflated, inflated, up, down, left, right. Balance. Find things in the middle. That's where the sweet spots are, right? Sorry to use a sexual analogy. I think that's the sport. I have to use a sexual analogy. Maybe that's what you're going to end. That's the sport. It's in the middle. Sex educator, by the way. I think she looked at the United Nations Interagency Standing Committee on the Minimal Initial Service Package on humanitarian aid in emerging countries. So, yeah. A lot of things that we learn it from there. Of course, I've already written about this in my first book, right? All right, Sad News 10. Ubabujon Masugu passed away. I write about him and the Masugu family. Ubabujon Masugu, where do I begin? Radio Mtwa has a legend in 1974, initially with the African Service of the Central African Broadcasting Service. CABS, yes. And then it switched to Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation, something like that, right? Remember back then, Matabeleland TV, Matabeleland TV, there were two separate TV stations. Most people don't know that. So John Masuku joined at the age of 19. You can also read it on my Facebook. I wrote a little obituary there. Yeah, literally paving the way. Ubaba wakhe uJeremiah Masuku had worked in the early 50s khona literally a Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation, literally from being umfana wenkomo emakhaya. You see, like what I'm saying, that someone in your family had to move from the village to the city. In my case, my privilege was that both grandfather, grandmother, both moved to Bulawayo, right? So my mother and father were born in Bulawayo, right? And then I was obviously born in Bulawayo as well. We are born in there. So somebody in your line of your family had to move to the village into the city, or in my case, four, which definitely helps. So that's why I say I have many mothers and many fathers, because I was fortunate to have both sets of grandparents within the same neighborhoods. These are things that you've never heard me speak about, because I know a lot of people don't have these things. So I normally don't speak about them, because I'm like, oh gosh, a lot of people have had such a... a lot of people have a rough upbringing out here. Do you know that? A lot of people have a really, really rough upbringing. So yeah, but anywho, that's just what life is. So about John Masuku, and then in 1975, early 19 years, then in Montrose Studios, Yasivulwa, and then Radio Mtwalazi began. Radio Mtwalazi ran for 5 years, and yeah, unfortunately they shut it down in 1980. So if you ask people about Radio Mtwalazi, you get crumbles. Nobody wants to tell you what happened in 1980, but yeah, it was shut down in 1980. Some of his relatives, Omalume bakhe uJoseph Lo Japhet Masuku, right? They used to have a rocking drive time show, or breakfast show, depending on when they were. I would pay top dollar to listen to those archives, but as you know, so we don't have archives of those recordings. So Eluveve, there used to be a Eluveve radio studio, and then they moved to 10th Avenue of Bulawayo before 1975 January moving to Montrose. So some of those things you can find it in my book Twalela Mtwalazi, right? And this 10 stay goal, look out for it. Lasekaya, it should be out probably end of March thereabout. So City Ulale Ngokolo Ubaba Omasuku, they paved the way for us in broadcasting. So like if you go through my index, Omasuku were broadcasting Ubaba John, the Masuku uncles, Yenu John himself, Labo Henry Masuku. I was literally recruited into Radio Dialogue in 2005 by Henry Masuku, Umzukulu wabo Masuku, right? So thank you so much, Henry Masuku. I spoke to Henry Masuku last year in 2025, and I was saying, Henry, it's been 20 years, literally 20 years. I walked into Radio Dialogue and going for me about I think I have another video talking about that as well. So that's a bit of radio. Kulumani FM, Lokozi FM, they had a link up this World Radio Day on February 13. It was quite nice to hear. They had a little insert called AI Bulawayo versus AI Durban. They had an AI song from Bulawayo and an AI song from Durban, and they went head to head in Nabasangas Basekozini. Bekubnandi really listening to the two connect together. And I remember going on Facebook because I watched it delayed, so I couldn't comment in real time. Most people don't know Bulawayo and Durban, those are two official twin cities. They are official twin cities since 2002. Kodwa kahle kahle into le yaqala ngo-1836. 1836, 190 years ago. Inkosi uMzilikazi yathuma induna Umbatha. No, not Umkumbata, Umlugul. I always mix those two up. Umlugul, right? Chief Umlugul was sent by King Mzilikazi from, they were not yet in Bulawayo at that time. They were in the Mariko Valley towards the border with Botswana, Mahikeng now. And then he sent Umbatha not to Durban, but to Cape Town, Cape Colony, to meet with Benjamin Durban, right? So the city of Durban gets its name from Benjamin Durban, right? Benjamin Durban was a Cape Colony, then Wayangapi, a Natal colony. And so that's how those things take years to develop. And of course, remember Uti Umtwagazi, right? Before it was converted into Matabeleland, it was part of the Union of South Africa Act at the 1908 South Africa Union conferences. And it's most of us don't know this thing. As the history is a final week, slow was out, So the Europeans wanted Umtwazi to be part of South Africa, but then some of the Rhodesians didn't want, and eventually those that didn't want prevailed. And then by 1922, there was a referendum. And then Mashonaland and Mtwagazi were combined into Rhodesia, and then Rhodesia into Zimbabwe. And it's really not that complicated. So Kulumane FM and Dukoze FM had that link up, and it was pretty nice. Yeah. Sister reconnecting. What else do I want to talk about? What am I listening to? Speaking of radio still, I'm loving BBC Radio 1. Obviously, it's the grand dame of radio. Just to speak about the BBC once more, Uba John Masugu developed, you really have to go to my Facebook to read this, what I wrote about it. Uba John Masugu developed Radio 4 for a minority, or the so-called minority. The word minority is used so carelessly. Like, if I'm sitting there in my house speaking my language, who are you to tell me I'm a minority? How does that work? Or we know a coin. And you want the British mentality is stuck in our minds. We have a black and white view of life, and yet life has never been black and white. I'm extremes: left, right, up, down, in, out, deflate, inflate. And yet there are things in between that nobody seems to speak about. So John Masugu went to train in the UK in 1980-81. That's how he developed Radio 4 on behalf of Amanyama languages, also to Nyambia, Chewa, Donga, Xhosa, Kalanga. What else do we have? Yes. I even know a language called Istumbuga. I found it in Matabeleland North, deep, right on the Zambezi Valley. Phezulu khona ngale, phezulu kweBinga, right? So Istumbuga is not even recognized in the 16 languages that are recognized. So Lagos Dombe. So we have a lot going on that we really don't know because of our generalizations. Unfortunately, English colonization taught us to love generalizations, and yet there is nothing general about the world. It's like udokotela. Idokotela nxa izinyo lakho libuhlungu ungayi kudokotela uthi lihle lakho libuhlungu. You waste time. So unfortunately, English culture taught us to generalize. That's why you see UK is in the state that it's in. That's why you see America is in the state that it's in. It's because of generalizations. If you live in a non-English speaking country, that's when you realize that English mentality is actually ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. It teaches generalizations, right? My other reflection to talk about in the comment section the other time, we spoke about a shout out to the people who were asking. I don't know if they want me to name them, but somebody was asking about borders as Africa. Here's the thing. We cannot be dishonest about one Africa, which is what we're doing now. Again, as a result, not as a result, because I find it lazy to always blame Europeans for our problems, as if all of our problems come from them, right? So the reason why Africa has 3,000 languages is because we had our own problems. Hello, how are you? We had our own problems before the white men arrived. It's as simple as that. And so when you take 5 languages and you make them into a country, and yet those people used to have pre-existing conditions and borders, it's all that it does is create trouble for whoever was not given the keys to the country when the colonizer was leaving. And in 1960, United Nations, they did warn Africans. They were like, no, we want a united Africa. Don't change the borders. The borders are just fine. Some of them, Julius Nyerere over there, they are the ones who left us in this mess. Granted, they didn't have enough information, or maybe they did, or maybe they did not, who knows. But then it's dishonest for us to just pretend to be carrying on as if we don't have problems as a result of the 54 European borders that were made in Africa now. Remember, we didn't create those borders, right? Because ukuthi khona marginalization in African countries is happening everywhere. Whoever has access to the keys of the country is holding on to it and lekani yakhe. There's literally a whole book called Our Turn to Eat, right? And I also wrote on Facebook, particularly in Uganda. You see, that's another thing that I dislike about us Africans. We don't even know what's going on in the next African country. We only know the little that we know. If I were to ask you what's going on in Burkina Faso, you wouldn't have a clue, besides just saying, Traore, or what's Traore doing? You know, there are 1.5 refugees from Burkina Faso who are in Ivory Coast. Nobody's talking about those. Nobody's asking themselves, how did those 1 million people become refugees in Ivory Coast? So, abantu abamnyama, us black people, we love this surface level understanding of the world we live in. You know, to be honest, and I'll be categorically honest with you, slavery and colonization does not happen to a group of people for 5,000 years by accident. Slavery and colonization needs you to be totally unaware of what's going on in the world that you live in. I didn't invent that world, it's you. So going back to Uganda, you know, Museveni is from the Ankole tribe, right? And the Ankole tribe has been controlling Uganda for 40 years, 40 plus years. So it leaves other people disenfranchised. That's just what it does. Yeah, I guess that's why Museveni removed Obote removed removed Obote, so Obote had a chance to come back through Amakus, right? And so as a result of Africans not listening about redoing the borders in 1960, that's when the Congo crisis began. Right, so the origins of Rumba music, I always see people losing their minds. Rumba music and blah, where did it come from? The Congo crisis in 1960, it made Congolese refugees into Bulawayo, right? Literally, my neighbors know Kasongo. So people in 2024, that whole Kasongo thing, Kasongo, yeah. Some of us have always known it. Literally, my neighbors were from the Kasongo family. So Orchestra Super Mazembe, it's I have the record somewhere. I don't want to stand up, but I'll bring it next time, right? Orchestra Super Mazembe is called Kasongo, right? It's an actual song. It's a really good song, really nice song. And those are the people who then brought that style of music into Bulawayo. And then I made a video on TikTok anyway, but then, you know, people want you to repeat things all the time. And then Usungura in Matabeleland, it's because the Congolese made some people become refugees in Kenya. And so those ones who went to Kenya created a record label called Sungura. And then those records went to Matabeleland. Tina, we had the Congolese directly in Bulawayo, right? So that's why the two genres sound similar. And then Iskoko Chabageti, what is being called Borodale Dance by Umakati and them, it's Iskokocha. It's a Matabeleland dance. It's literally in the Matabeleland dance syllabus at the Ministry of Education. Yay! That child, you know, so people are calling that dance Borodale. It's Isikokocha. Please. I think I have explained this a million times. I feel like I'm going to lose my mind with having to explain things over and over. But again, I don't expect everybody to read. It's just impossible. And also, information reaches people at different times. So we're going to have to do this. So keep coming, keep subscribing, share, like, comment, right? And remember, I don't know everything. And it's one of the worst things you can do to someone, to assign someone the burden of appearing as if they know someone. I always tell the younger ones who contact me, am I historians? We make mistakes, right? Because the analysis yami is based on being born in the 80s. Although, of course, I do have an above average analysis than most people. But then the function of being a young people is to take things to another level, right? Right. So I always say, Mina, I'm able to see my mistakes. I am my historians, and then I'm able to take it higher. That's the function of being a young person. Ayikhona ukuhlala khona phana uthi uba uphatha nyathi wathi, therefore. How? Evaluate for yourself. And so that's the other problem with industry in music, why our industry is not progressing. This guy was supposed to interview me. Now I'm saying it here. Uthando wanted to interview me to get my opinions of what's going on with the music industry. And I always say, listen, I most certainly did not put this in the book. I don't know why. Let me think. No, here I was just trying to capture history. I wasn't putting my opinion, right? So I don't have an opinion predominantly. I was just putting history here. The people who invented amapiano, I'm going to use South Africa as an example. The people who invented amapiano, they faced resistance from the people who do house music. The people who do house music, they face resistance from people who do kwaito music. The people who did kwaito music faced resistance from people who were doing disco. Disco is splash in the whole genre, the mid 80s, 90s, that was the in thing then. And then Abe Kwaito, the kids were like, nope, we're not doing disco, we're doing Kwaito. That's why you find with South Africa, they don't like disco music. Tina is flying Saganga, blah, blah. It's because young South Africans were like, nope, Tina, we upgrade. We don't use the same genre, right? The people who were doing disco, they faced resistance from people who were doing Bakana, Soul Brothers. The people who were doing Bakana, they faced resistance from people who were doing Istatamiya. Lady Smith, Black Mambazo. The people who were doing Istatamiya faced resistance from people who were doing Irabi, West Nkos. The people who were doing Irabi, or West Kosi, Mama Miriam Makeba, Mama Dorothy Masugu from Bulawayo or Masuga, they made a mistake. They started calling her Masuga in South Africa, but she's Dorothy Masugu, right? At least I talk about her, right, in the book, Miss Bulawayo, 1953. The people who were doing Irabi, they face resistance from people who were doing Imbube, right? So the function of being a young person in the music industry is to develop your own fucking sound. Ungaphiki ngabantu abadala. Hey, asizwana nini? The history of Nguni music in 7 stages: Imbube, Irabi, Istatamiya, disco, kwaito, house, amapiano. There's something that I left in the middle, but you can always rewind, dang it. So the function of being young is to create your own genres. So I get worried, Goblawayo. The people I remember we invented Imbube, Istatamiya, Irabi, Ubabuchosaya. Gosh, do I have to preempt the book? I have to talk about stuff, but then I end up preempting the book for somebody because I want this thing to be a surprise when you read them, even though it's history. But then I need to sell books. I need you to buy the book so that you don't just get surprised, but to be like, okay, you have to have incentive to reading the book. Abantu bakubulawayo for inventing Imbube all the way to Irabi, Istatamiya, and all of them genres which became perfected in South Africa, right? So that's the other thing. Again, Uthandukolo says Akuta. I wanted to give him a brilliant interview, which is certainly not in my book or any of my book or nothing that I've ever written anyway. So I'm gonna have to leave it here. Interview which or at least for his audience on his Catch Tankolo. He does last year we were developing these online Facebook shows. They've become lazy, so we do Dr. Love on Thursdays, at least most times when we can. Remember, my paneling echo complete, we can't do it. Usisa does Umjolo on Fridays. Uthandukolo does, he calls it the EFF on Fridays on his Facebook. Chris used to do Mtwazi quiz. She no longer does it. It was such a brilliant thing. And then they also do chit chats every now and then, Ngama Sundays and all of that. And of course there was also Asakane and yeah. But anywho, Or maybe people went to TikTok Live. People were sleeping on TikTok Live. I don't like TikTok Lives no more because it's those people, and then people are less likely to listen to things that they should listen to. But anywho, what good thing did I want to say? I lost my train of thought now. Dun, 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 dun. Do not remember. It's not in the script. Forgot. It's to do with the music. Along the lines of young people should create their own sound. Because abantu abadala, they are stuck in their world. That's just what abantu abadala do. Right? Remember, it just didn't make sense, and now everybody's into it. Right? So young South Africans, I really appreciate. I've remembered. Bulawayo created many of these genres which go to South Africa, and then they become taken by South Africa, and Bulawayo is left out. Literally all of these genres. Amapiano Uba Utemba Umalume Utemba Ndlovu. He's the one who started using the Korg M1 piano. Now, Amapiano is taken from Korg M1 piano. Obviously, it was Zulu-nized to Amapiano. Who has time to say M1 piano? I'm like, Amapiano. It's a synthesizer thing which enables you to make those gung gung gong gong sound. And so Umalume Utemba Ndlovu was literally one of the first people to use it in his song from 40 years ago, Meet Me in Zimbabwe, right? And then Ubaba Hamilton's Zimande also Tata Uhamsa with Denchant. And it's, yeah. Not even reading my book. Anyway, my last point. So we spoke about borders. The 54 African countries were created by Europe. That's why Africa has so many conflicts. It's really not that hard for you to understand, right? Whoever was given the keys to the factory that was developed by Europe is entrenching that power to themselves. And Netherlands, we live such a decentralized life. I think I mentioned this again on my Facebook. In Netherlands, everywhere in the country, there should be a hospital, a supermarket, and a private doctor within a 1 kilometer radius. 1 kilometer radius is because that village, everybody drives a car. There should be public transport as well for accessibility. And there definitely should be cycle tracks. The Netherlands is accessible anyway by bicycle, right? Of course, the Netherlands is a very small country, half the size of Matabeleland North, and it's literally. So can you imagine, right? Even in Netherlands, in Ghana, there are 38 types of Dutch within a space that's half the size of Matabeleland North. Right. So ama-generalizations wathanda kakhulu. Uyezwa umuntu enkaya esithi esintwini senza kanje, abantu beGwanda, they don't do what you're talking about. Uyezwa umuntu weBhayibheli esithi eMatabeleland kunje, abantu beWange, they don't do what you're talking about in Bhayibheli. Omunye umuntu indaba zinduna liyenza kanje. Ekejenge, they don't do that, right? So Amakiwa, specifically the British, they told us to love generalizations. And remember, Slobo, and I'm always arguing with David Coulthard on his Facebook whenever he brings up the issue of abortion, right, which is being debated these days to sort of like decriminalize abortion, right? And obviously we call that as a fervent Christian. I'm like, Coulthard, you have to remember, you and your ancestors, you came to Africa from a place of European Protestantism, right? Europeans don't live there no more. And you are stuck right there. You're keeping Africans in European Protestantism, and Europe don't live there no more. Because Europeans who live in Africa, they did not go through the Enlightenment. There was an Enlightenment which happened in Europe. That's why I told you Europe, nobody's got time for religion and all of those. Woo! Just jealous, Slobo. At the age of 7, I picked up a Bible. And I was like, I'm not reading this. I'm above that. One not doing biblical stuff around here. We are told. abathanda ukubala My Bible is ibhuli kabaphathanyathi lo Marike Faba. It's called Lost K Queen of the Ndebele. 2025, I told you that book was going for $40 on Amazon. Guess how much it costs now? 170. It's become a collector's edition. All right, last one. Yeah, sadly, with TikTok, people were talking about children. There's a serious drug abuse go all over Matabeleland. Really, our young people, our young people are just numbing their pain by using substances, and it's really sad. And on the flip side, we've seen a lot of AMA rehab centers popping up. One of the best ones I know is called Valley of Hope. I don't know what happened to my website. I lost a page. I used to have an A to Z of resources of where to go for certain situations in life. Slogo, ngengezwa with TikTok literally before. What made me do a reflection now is because I was on TikTok and people were talking about things like, yeah, ambathana abantwana bekhulekele church. Slobo. Ezinye izinto zifuna ukujuja iJackson ngudokotela lifeini wena ulokhu ubhizi usathi amen and all of those funny things. Honestly, mina sengayehluleka guys. I've spent 20 years telling you guys to stop this religion thing. Zizohlanya khapha loda. I'll tell you a funny story. My ex called me some years back. Well, like, do you remember you told me ukuthi uzibani bani ngikhaya uzahlanya nxa ngesiKristu sivela mhambise ngutsheni. Like, of course, that's what that thing does. Slobo. Life doesn't work like that. Life will never work like that. Things have to be written down. Right. Me, I write these things for myself, or I write these things down for people in my family, and everybody else who benefits from it is an extra. Me believing into ezinjalo, don't have time for nonsense. Honestly, don't have time for nonsense. I was like, I'm not getting baptized. I'm not setting my feet in church. My feet in church? The only time I go to church is if there's a wedding or a funeral. Like when so we're literally snoring the butt out of my ass crack, wondering when this nonsense is gonna end. And whoever is dying or whoever is getting married, why the hell did you bring me here? Got better things to do in my time. Honestly, don't have time for nonsense of a biblical nature or anything that requires you to not do your work. One of my favorite quotes in life as we close, right? I realized that I'm over time. Toni Morrison speaking at the Portland State University in 1975 in May, right? She said something that I never forgot. To paraphrase, distraction. Anything that prevents you from doing your work. Anything that keeps you explaining over and over your reason for being. Somebody says your head isn't shaped right, and you spend your life proving that your head is shaped right. Somebody says you don't have kingdoms. You spend your whole lives trying to prove that you do. There will always be one more thing. That's what Toni Morrison said in 1975. So that's why the LGBT, the gay thing, I never explained myself. I don't have time for that. I don't owe nobody anything in that regard. But of course, I am well aware because a variety of people have asked me to speak about it, and I think I should, for the purposes of younger people out there who might be struggling with something that's simpler than they think because they don't ask, right? As a result of believing all these woo-woo things like religion and woo-woo things like African culture. African culture, woo-woo. These days I'm hearing people speaking about, remember Ngazenhlale, South Africa, right? I'm hearing words like istwalo, words like ukuromba, and I always laugh because Ngazenhlale Mashonaland, Ngazenhlale South Africa, so I can always hear that these two things are not from Matabeleland. So I'm like, woo-woo, abantu woo-woo, people who believe in woo-woo, people who don't read in life. Kade ma libraries fagile lapha. into is correct, because we always put correct things in libraries. So abantu abathanda ihuhu, there's a ngutsheni waiting for you somewhere, and mina ngiyaspecialize engutsheni sihlobo, ngiyakufaka engutsheni bekujuje kayi-1 kungasebenzi ngithi double up sihlobo, put that juju one more time, not the juju that you know, I mean the juju that the Jujek said, and you're gonna be just fine. Trust me, Boblawayo, I've put a lot of people engutsheni, and ngiyathi dokotela uyatsara lo uyaraha, juja one more time. Double that dose, please. Don't have time for nonsense. It's either there's mathematics or there's woo, and I promise you, in life there's only mathematics. All right, thanks so much, people. Let's do this again next time. Yeah, like, subscribe, and share with friends and family, and let's tell each other the truth about what's going on in the world that we live in, right? Umuntu Omnyama has literally, there's a new book out which explains that black people have been enslaved for 5,000 years. Those things don't happen by accident. Being colonized and enslaved, it needs you to be empty in the head. It's as simple as that, right? So 20 more is on distraction, anything that prevents you from doing your work. I do not know what your work is. Me, I write my things down, and if I'm not writing them down, I'll go to the radio. If I'm not on radio, as you can see, I sometimes take them to an office. This is as formal as I will go. The beauty of the Netherlands. I went to the UK in 2024 the first time. They are wearing suits. They are wearing ties. They are wearing belts. And actually, so I haven't put on a belt. The last time I put on a belt, they're wearing shoes. Unlike the English are ridiculous. What is this? They're wearing a belt. Shoes to work. Shoes, like actual shoes. There's polish, like shoe polish. I laughed until I cried. Like the English. I'm telling you, it was the most ridiculous thing I saw in UK corporate culture. Wearing a shirt, shoes and tie, and a belt. I can't get the hell out of here. All right, good people. Goodbye. See you next time. Bula, Bulawayo, Bula. That's my city. Last one, by the way, Bulawayo does not mean place of death, as the Bulawayo City Council and all the poor historians usually say. Bulawayo means Ngingo Bulawayo. I'm the one who's being persecuted. That's what King Nothimula said. Coincidentally, King Shaka also said the same thing in 1924. Or thereabout, right? You can go on my website and search Bulawayo. I have a story about the meaning of Bulawayo. I saw some influential journalists from Bulawayo saying place of death. Probably somebody read something that I wrote, and they were like, no, Bulawayo means place of death. I'm like, Uba Patsanyat literally spent 30 years saying that's not correct. How many times do you want us to explain? Who would give a city a name called place of death? That's definitely not what it means. Right, Tolelegam Twagazi for everybody in Europe and Japan, Australia, US and Canada, South Africa and Ekaya coming soon, hopefully end of March or thereabout, right? Right, cheers guys, bye.